Hey everyone, Dave here. Welcome to episode 57 of the Pocket Mastermind podcast. On this episode, I'm talking to Brian Brogen about executional excellence. We're also talking about leadership, prioritization, the education system, and a whole bunch more. So really hope you enjoy this conversation. If you do, please remember to like, share, follow, write us a review, subscribe, do all of that good stuff, and help me to get this message out further. And with that, let's get on with the show. So the big question is this: how do ordinary people like us that weren't born into money create true financial freedom, take back control of our lives, and live a life full of purpose, meaning, and fulfillment? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Join me and follow along as I learn, apply, and share the strategies that the wealthy know and use that the rest of us weren't taught to create true financial freedom. My name is David Bell, and welcome to Pocket Mastermind. Brian, welcome to the Pocket Mastermind podcast. How are you?
Hey, it's great to be here today. How are you doing?
I'm really good. So, another American guest, which is good. Whereabouts in the States are you?
I'm in Central Florida. So if you're from across the pond overseas, you probably know where Disney World is. I'm about an hour to the west of Disney.
Nice and warm.
Yeah, it is very warm here.
always summer. It's definitely not that here right now, I can tell you. We're recording this middle of October, and it's getting grey. It's very different to where you are.
Yes,
it's really good. But thank you for coming on. And today we're going to talk about executional excellence and exactly what that means. But before we dig into that topic, let's get a bit of background about you, Brian.
Yeah, so I am one of those guys that went to what we call the School of Hard Knocks, and I tell everyone that I was looking for a job, and I found a very rewarding career in construction. And so I got into construction and became a shipping clerk. So we were putting together shipping tickets for shipping steel, and then we worked into becoming a fitter and fabricator, and then went out into the field and started doing field services. Today I'm the vice president of field operations for a multi-million-dollar construction company.
Nice. So how's that career path been for you?
You know, it's again, it's that earning your stripes. I have two 21-year-old twin boys that have decided to follow me in work boots and a construction hard hat. And I keep telling them, hey, you got to earn your stripes. You know, there's a lot of jokes and fun and practical jokes that happen in construction. And
yeah, I've got some friends who work in various construction industries. Yeah,
it's part of the initiation, and you got to get that behind you and start learning. And one of the things, the reason I got involved with leadership and podcasts and all these things is I went back to high schools and told high school students, hey, listen, you know, teachers and parents are telling you to pay attention, and how I wish I would have paid attention, and how much math there is in construction, and how much writing letters, bid letters, and proposals and things. And so just giving students the why has become important to me.
I think that's an important topic, and a conversation I've had with quite a lot of people actually is when you're in school, the why isn't really talked about very much. There's a lot of do the subjects for the sake of doing the subjects and learning these things, learning things for the sake of learning. And I had exactly the same experience. You don't really get given the picture as to how you will be able to use the skills and the knowledge that they do teach you while you're at school. In the future, it's just about learn, job, and you don't really know how to put the two together when you're a kid.
Yeah, so David, I have a theory with this, and these teachers and educators, they are wonderful people who dedicate their lives to service and education. However, they're always in education. They leave high school, they go to college, they come back to teach. So it's very difficult for them to give the real world examples. And so industry has got to get involved and become a partner, because most educators, now there are some few that have went out and had careers and come back into education. Those are some jewels there. But for the most part, they stay in education. Nothing wrong with that. That's not a problem. But we in the industrial fields, any kind of careers, need to go back and explain to the students the why.
Yeah, I think that really is a missing piece. It is the why. It's the applied part of all the subjects, and it's the life skills. And again, this conversation comes around quite frequently. It's the life skills that are really what's missing by the time you leave school. And I think if we're able to bring those the why and the life skills and showing how the lessons apply, the lessons would be more engaging in the first place, and you'd probably get more students paying attention rather than messing around at the back of the class because they don't really understand what this means to them.
It sounds like you were in my class. I was in the back of the class messing around. And I love to tell this story. You know, we actually had a shop class, you know, and there are more of those coming these days, but we would throw welding rods into the acoustical ceiling instead of learning to weld with them, which, you know, now I understand how important welding is. But today, when I go back into the schools, I tell those students, I say, look above you, that ceiling, that's a 2x4 ceiling tile. Mm-hmm. And to understand how many there are in this building, you say this building is 20 foot wide by 50 foot wide, and you do some multiplication and some division, and you figure out, okay, I need this many ceiling tiles. Mm-hmm. And I had one of the students ask me this question. He said, well, Brian, why don't you just count them? And I said, that's a great question. I said, however, when we have drawings and plans laying in front of us, they're not here to count. And we have to understand waste. And it's just, I mean, real world examples right there in the classroom that you can make them understand why math is so important.
Exactly, because when you are that age, your perspective is very narrow. You haven't got much experience and much understanding of how the world works. So to him, that kind of question would be completely logical until they stood on a large site, for example, or saw, like you said, the drawings for an enormous site, and then said, we're going to count all of the million bricks that are in that building.
Exactly.
It's just not practical.
Yeah. That's been a lot of fun, David. I encourage anyone to get involved with high schools, volunteer your time, and help these educators make real world examples of what these students are learning.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like we said this before, but you know, that why and the life skills, hugely important, hugely important. I think that's the missing link for engagement. But let's talk about executional excellence. And you and I spoke briefly just before we started recording this, and a lot of conversations that I have is around, you know, getting started, getting over the fear to get going, and following some kind of passion or whatever. But actually, one area that we don't talk as much about is probably that execution with excellence, and what does that, first of all, what does that mean to you? And then secondly, let's talk about how to apply that.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with you. We do have to get started. I mean, that's got to be the number one thing is get going. So many people are paralyzed.
Nothing to execute if we don't.
Yeah, you got to get going. So that's definitely a very important principle and something needs to be addressed. But after you get started, let's talk about a plan. You know, one of the most important things about executing excellence is knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it. Mm-hmm. So the first thing we want to know is what is our purpose? Why? What is the reason? What is this project or this task or this company? What is it going to deliver and why? So that's our purpose. Of course, that's always popular. Get a purpose.
But that's, again, I think that's important. Is I think we get very much sucked into a specific task without knowing how the task necessarily relates to the overarching purpose. And I think we kind of start things, and I've definitely done this many times in my life, and then you realize you've kind of jumped a step or two, and you've got to understand what's the bigger picture, what's the bigger goal, so that then you know which tasks to prioritize as well before you know, other than anything else.
And so, David, that leads into the next step of a plan is length. So the first P, and this is an acronym like we always like to use, purpose, length. So we got to know how long each activity towards our goal is going to take. And there are multiple activities for excellent execution. There are multiple things that have to go on that we have to plan and prepare for, and one thing leads to another thing. It's project management. Anything we do in life, you go to the grocery store with a checklist. It's a project.
Yes.
The outcome is when I leave here, I'm going to have these items. And if the convenience store or the grocery store has done their job, you're going to have a few more items that you added on. Yeah. So we need to have a schedule. We need to have some things that we're going to do by a certain date and hold ourselves accountable, whether that's getting an accountability partner, whether that's having a written schedule and saying, okay, by this date this has to be done, or here's plan B. And so the length is very important. How long are these activities going to take to get me to my end goal? And then the next thing is action. The third thing is action. And you said that earlier, getting started. Too often people have great plans and they have great ideas, but they just never take that first step. And that first step is commitment, man. Mm-hmm. Because when you take the first one, you really got to head towards the end if you're going to meet that goal. So action, really, and we're not talking about just activity. We're talking about action that gets you closer to your goal. Every step, every milestone, and celebrate. So when you've got the schedule and you've got the milestones built out, celebrate those action steps. You know what? If you're trying to raise $100,000, when you get that first 1,000, attaboy, good job, attagirl. Just take the time to celebrate those milestone achievements and know you're onto your goal. And then the last thing in plan is negotiate. Mm-hmm. And so understand things are going to change. I happen to be a pilot, so I like to fly airplanes for fun. And one of the things we do is we create a flight path. And in that flight path, we have checkpoints along the way to make sure we're on track to get to our destination. Guess what happens? The wind blows us off track. Same thing in life. And you have to make corrections and inputs to bring it back to your desired course, or you're going to wind up in the wrong place. You're not going to make that goal. So that's the acronym I have for excellent communication, excellent execution is purpose, length, action, and then negotiate. And when you're negotiating, you can go back and change some of those things and keep going towards that end goal.
And do you use any particular kind of framework like OKRs, any particular kind of any model for setting goals and then and those milestones or key results?
So David, you're going to have to tell me what an OKR is. I need to learn this lesson.
So this is I can't remember which book it is. There's a book called Measure What Matters, and yes. The OKR framework was objectives and key results, and the idea being that you have your objective is more of a larger aspirational thing, and quite often set on a quarterly basis. And for each objective, you'd have 3 to 5 key results. And the idea being that if you set the right key results, if you tick them all off, you will have achieved the objective. If you tick them all off and you haven't achieved the objective, then it would suggest that your key results weren't accurate or weren't exactly what you should have been doing.
Yeah, definitely. So we are keeping track of monitoring where we're at, what objectives have been met and what got us there. And as you allude to, sometimes we forgot a step, man. We missed an action item and we've got to add that. And that goes back to that negotiation and tracking and monitoring these things that are happening on time. Hey, guess what? Life happens. Things change. Weather in a project like we do, weather changes things. But you go back to the plan and you say, okay, that cost us 3 days. We're going to add 3 days to the schedule. We're going to add 3 days to this event, and we're going to get back up. Or maybe we gain those 3 days through some creativeness, through some overtime, through overlapping people. But whatever you got to do to stay on course, or just make notes and keep track that this changed our course and this is why. So at the end, you're holding yourself and others accountable.
Yeah, so talking holding yourself and others accountable, let's talk about from the leadership perspective. Have you learnt good practices of bringing a group of people on board to buy into the purpose and the plan, and how do you then lead a team of people? I mean, particularly in your industry, right? You've got people from all different trades and different skill sets that you've got to bring on board to complete a project. Let's talk a bit about the skills required to be able to achieve that.
So David, earlier I told you that I went to the School of Hard Knocks. And unfortunately, this is one of those where, Brian has an idea and Brian's a leader, and Brian walks into a meeting and says, this is what we're going to do, all on board. And Brian has learned the hard way through a couple of projects that does not work, right? And
share one of those experiences.
Yeah. So what I like to tell people is when I've had something in my mind that I've bought into, I've had the time to think, I've wrote it down, I've processed it, I've worked through some of the details, and now I just want to dump it on the team without them having even if maybe I had a conversation with someone else, maybe you and I have a conversation today and I leave here and I say, that's a great idea, I'd like to implement that.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a conversation with you and I had time to process that. We got to give our team the same time, the same ability, the same time to process and say, here's the idea, what do you think about it? And what I've found, David, is sometimes they improve, let's say most of the time, they improve my idea. Or the idea I got from you, it may not fit us like a glove, and they have ideas to make it fit us like a glove. And so you got to take it back to the team. You got to say, hey, this is an idea I have. I think it has this end result. What do you think? Should we implement this? Are the assets greater than the minuses? And can we make this work? And when you do that, that's how you get buy-in. When you include, it's just about including people. It's very simple.
Oh, I think I've been to the same school as you. It's when you can definitely be too keen and too eager to get going and get moving with something, and you can easily get yourself frustrated when everybody doesn't suddenly get up and move at the same pace, because like you said, you've had time to mull it over, to think through what you consider to be the pluses and minuses. You think you've done the mitigation thinking and all the rest of it, and you're ready to roll, and then if you've got a large team of people there, whoa, hit them like a steam train.
Absolutely. And sometimes they say you're a bulldozer, sometimes and that's just not that's never going to be the way to make things happen. The way to always including people and having people work with you. John Maxwell likes to say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a team.
And I love that. I love that quote.
Think that through, that, we all need each other. I don't have all the ideas, man. There's no monopoly on ideas. No. Somebody slings a title at you and now all of a sudden you have all the ideas. No, thank you. Other human beings can help me make decisions and make better decisions. Yeah,
I think that's a key point around. I think a lesson I learned in leadership was very much be more of a sounding board for ideas than necessarily the creator of them. Because I think if you put the problem out to the team that you're working with, they will come up with solutions. They may not all work because you have a different perspective, but the purpose of your role, I believe, in leadership is to provide that additional perspective that somebody else within a specific role may not have the benefit of.
Yeah, let me tell you another one of Brian's lessons, David, and I could write a book on this. So I wish I
should.
Yeah. When we have some managers meetings and we bring people together for ideas, all of them are typically in production roles. You got people that are making things happen for you. When they unload their ideas on you and they expect you to take them and do something with them, I had to learn after several meetings and realize this isn't going anywhere. Mm-hmm. I've got to share this responsibility. You've got a great idea. How will you help me execute it? Because I can't take on the burden of all these ideas. Mm-hmm. And we're all busy by nature. We all strive to stay productive and stay in the game. But if we're going to do something new, something very, and the other thing is, do one at a time. You're going to have a brainstorming session. There's going to be, hopefully you have 100 ideas come out of it. Pick one and execute that one well. And then if you do that one well, grab the next priority. but pick one.
And rerun the exercise, because the other 99 might not be relevant anymore. You've done the one, and that could have changed everything so much that the other ideas that you thought were good, whenever way back when, they're no longer relevant. They're not good. They're not going to solve the immediate problem. I think that's something else we get trapped into, is by trying to do too many things at once, the process becomes elongated, and then as a result we end up delivering something in 2 years' time that probably doesn't really need, isn't the right solution for the challenge you're now facing.
I got a great story that will reinforce that. This weekend, Friday, I hosted something called Live to Lead, and Kat Cole was one of our speakers. And Kat Cole said she was in a foreign country, and she was speaking with the leaders of a community, and they asked them, "What's your number one priority?" And they said, "Water." Now the first thought of that is, man, I feel so spoiled that I don't even think about needing water.
Yeah.
And so they asked them what their second priority was, and it was water.
Wow.
And they asked them what their third priority was, and they said water. And then they explained themselves to Kat and said, "Listen, if you have all these ideas, if you build us a school, we won't be able to operate the school because we don't have water. If you teach us hygiene and nutrition, we won't be able to follow through because we don't have water." And she said what she took away from that was prioritization. Get the water first, and then we can tackle all these other things. So I wrote down in my book, what is my water? And I'm going to go forward with that. You know, what's the highest priority? Take care of that, and then tackle these other things. But let's get the water for. Let's get the most important, the most critical thing first.
That's incredible perspective, actually, because
I loved it.
It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's going to, now I'm never going to forget that, and I think anybody listening will probably not forget that, because we do try and rush in, and we I think we try and solve a particular problem because it looks big, and not necessarily that it's the most it's going to deliver the greatest results or be the catalyst for everything else.
Yeah, I'm great. I'm like you, man. I'm going to have that in my mind and think that going forward. What's my water? What's my priority? What do I need to take care of right now that's going to help this team move forward?
And and then throughout the process, do you have particular methods for making sure the team stays engaged, they still understand where the priorities are, if the priorities change, how do you make sure that that's, again, managed with excellence?
The most important thing is point them back to the purpose and back to the mission. And it's a filter for me myself. Is what I'm doing and is what you're doing, is it going to push us forward towards this common goal? If it's not, it's a distraction. You know, and keep that filter on yourself, because hey, we have thousands of distractions. This social media world we live in, everything going on around us, it catches your eye, and oh man, I need to do that. I need to do this. But let's just go back to that thought. What's the water? What's going to help me the most?
And what about ongoing? So particular things like in various sales roles that I've worked in over the years. Everyone has different kind of methods of making sure that you're aligned on what the objective is in the given moment. So you, like a morning sales meeting, for example. I assume I've never really worked in construction, but I assume quite often there would be site meetings that kind of start the day. It's those disciplines that make sure everyone remains on the same page. Is there a process that you've used like that?
Yeah, so let's use sales as an example. I had a meeting with the two sales representatives that I employ today. And what's the number one thing for sales? And you've been in this, so tell me what you think the number one water for sales is.
Product.
Making contacts.
Yeah.
You know, picking up the phone.
Yes, this is true. Yeah.
So what we do, and especially, with this COVID, we don't get to meet him in person as much as we used to.
No.
The phone has become or even Zoom calls have become very important. So the question for that team is, how many calls did you make this week? Who did you speak with? What were the results of that? and then say, okay, that's great. Have you thought about talking to this person? Here's another contact we haven't talked to in a while. But not a demand. It's an inquisitive. Hey, how's this going for you? How can I help you become a better salesperson? How can I help you contact more people?
Yes, it's again, it comes from having the different perspective. You're able to guide rather than shove, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yep. I tell people that we have a rope to pull with, not a rod to prod with.
Yes.
And a rope can get slack. If the other person lets go, the rope falls.
And how about for yourself, for your own, let's call it your life executional excellence? Do you have a way in which you particularly start and or end your days?
I am not real, I guess the word's disciplined with doing the same thing every day. I like to be creative. And so I wake up sometimes, say, okay, this morning I'm going to this project. And sometimes I say, you know what, this afternoon I'm going over here. I like to be available.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're too regimented, then you kind of absorb your own schedule and you're not available. So I don't have anything other than, pointing back to the goal. I don't have anything rigid in my schedule.
Interesting. Yeah, I think everyone. I love asking these kind of questions because it's an interesting way of finding the different approaches that different personalities take. Like some people want to be super regimented and do the same thing over and over again, and then you there's more fluid, and then there's always somewhere in between, and it's interesting to find out how people operate in different ways.
Well, David, there's never one way to do anything. So
this is the thing. I think, one of the reasons I asked this question is I think in life we are always chasing the right way to do something, right? Whether it's the perfect gym routine or the perfect diet or the perfect plan or the perfect this and the perfect that. And what I want to try and illustrate by asking everybody these kind of questions is everyone's got their way of doing it. The most perfect way of doing something is doing it
your way, the way that works for you, the way that gets results for you. And we talked about executing excellence. We're not talking about perfection.
Exactly.
Because that is a lofty and exhausting goal right there.
I would say impossible.
It's an impossible goal. And it'll also keep you from taking action, because if you're not perfect, you're not ready to go.
Yes.
Can I tell your listeners something?
Go.
Nobody is perfect.
I completely agree.
And nobody has the answer for you. Use what you get from people in podcasts. Use what you get from others to create your way, what works for you. You can definitely have influence. You can definitely have suggestions. And some things I do may work for some of your listeners, but it's not going to work for all of them.
Exactly. And that's the point, really, of these conversations, to spark ideas, of say, well, let me try that, see if it would work. And that's what I want people to do is to take the ideas, and it's not take it as the way, take it as a way, and see what it works, take what works, and leave what doesn't. There will be something from all the conversations that people listen to here, that there will be something that rings a bell with somebody and will resonate, and probably will have a positive effect, because we've all picked up ideas from everywhere along our way, and this is a great opportunity just to share them.
Absolutely.
It makes such a difference. So maybe on this topic of execution or excellence or leadership, have you got a favorite book that you would recommend? Like, if you could pick one book in this sphere, what would you reckon that'd be?
So picking one is difficult, but you had this question for me, so I wrote down a few of them, but the one that I'd say is really a great one that you can learn from about this topic is Turn Your Ship Around by David Marquette.
Mm-hmm.
And so David was a naval officer, and he inherited this ship that was in dismal morale. People were leaving the ship and having to be replaced. And he turned that around, where most people stayed for years on the ship and the ship got glowing reviews. It's just a really good analogy of a naval person taking something. And I didn't realize, similar to our employees, they have choices.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about how big the fleet is, they can choose to serve under whoever they want to serve on.
Yeah.
And so taking a ship and saying, we want to make this the desirable place for you to work, for you to maintain your career, David did a great job with that, and really illustrates it well in his book.
Yeah, I think you're the second person to recommend that book. I can't remember who else recommended it, but it's a couple of months ago I seem to remember that coming up as a recommendation. So yeah, it's on my list. So how about the other two? If you had two other books you could...
As a John Maxwell coach, trainer, and speaker, I got to give John one of these books.
Yeah, you better add us
everyone communicates, few connect. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, when a leader walks in and says, hey, here's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of truly connecting, truly understanding, and saying, you know what, this is an idea I'm considering. What do you think about it? Because the only way it's ever going to work is if you get buy-in.
Mm-hmm. Did you from doing your training as a coach, did you find through that process of learning to coach that actually you learned at the same time about yourself even more? Because
100%, man. And teach, they say teaching's the best teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely, and having a podcast as you do, I learn from my guest.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've learned to do is take my pen and my paper and write down what they're telling me, and write down those thoughts that come in that previously I would have interjected them in the conversation and took over the conversation arrogantly, stupidly. But today I've learned, especially when you're having, very crucial conversations, write it down, save your thoughts because they may answer your question if you'll just listen.
Yes.
Whatever you were about to ask them could get answered, and then you don't have to ask the question, right? So just, we have you're going to hear this thousands of times from people. We have 2 ears and one mouth. We need to use it that way.
You're just saying about the interrupting. I back in my previous corporate life, I can't tell you how many presentations I either gave or sat through where somebody would be asking the questions throughout the presentation when quite clearly the answer was going to be on a future slide. It's like it's so keen to hear themselves. I think it is that you're asking the questions, and it absolutely throws the entire flow. Someone's spent hours working on this presentation, whether it be to an external or an internal. More often than not, it tends to be internal in my experience. And the whole person spent hours putting this presentation together for the whole flow to get disrupted by somebody who wants to ask questions at inappropriate times. So writing down is an important thing.
Yeah, and if you're in an event like that has that, write yourself questions. You typically at the end they're going to have time for questions.
Yes.
And write that down. If they answer it, cross through that one, then you can ask the next one. And for me, it wasn't about hearing myself. It's about, I'm going to forget this, so I got to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have a short attention span. But to write it down puts it down on paper. I don't have to think about it anymore. It's captured.
Yeah. The other thing I'd add to that is something I heard. I think Simon Sinek. I may have heard it from Simon Sinek, and he was talking about Nelson Mandela and how his dad was a village elder, a leader of a tribe, and Simon Sinek, somebody interviewed Nelson Mandela, and they said, "What did you learn from your father being the village elder and the leader of his tribe?" And he used to go and sit in the meeting, the kind of the tribe meetings that his father used to run, and he said the single biggest lesson he learnt from his father was to always be the last person to speak. So listen, he would ask the questions, and the rule was you could only speak to ask questions and to clarify what somebody else had said, but you would always be the last person to give your opinion, because 9 times out of 10 everybody's already answered come up with the solutions or made the suggestions or solved the problems. You don't need to do it.
And David, that's great advice, because think about this. Even in a short setting like that, your opinion can change.
Hmm.
I mean, let's just be
Hugely.
honest. You could, wow, okay, I was going to take this approach. Now I've heard more information,
Mhm.
and my opinion has changed. So be careful. I'll tell you another story. Early in my career, the owner of the company sent me to a pre-bid, and I was a young man. I mean, they put me out there early. And he said, listen, here's the best thing to do. Similar to what I just said, write down your questions and wait, because somebody in the room may ask that question, and then you don't look like the young, uneducated, inexperienced person. What do they say? Some may think you're an idiot, but if you open your mouth, you remove all doubt.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
so that was what I learned early on. And when I'd go to these pre-bids, man, and a lot of people in the room be my seniors, and I just wait. And if my question they can answer, then I would finally speak up and say, okay, I'd like to have the answer to this question.
Hmm.
But other than that, 9 times out of 10, they get answered.
It's interesting because through my career, I spoke to, you had a lot of younger people starting to come through. When you're starting to get old, because the grads start coming through and they and they look like they were born yesterday. And I think there's a lot of fear in people when they first come into the corporate environment, into a work environment, that they feel like they have to ask questions to be seen to be engaging. Whereas my advice is exactly like yours was with yourself, was sit down and shut up and listen to what the people who in converted commas know what they're doing and talk about, and listen to the conversation. Because if you spend more time listening to the debates that go on, you'll understand the reasoning of how people think and why they think a certain way, and then you can form your own opinion as to whether you agree or disagree. And then on the side, you can go and have a separate conversation and say, hey, I heard this bit of conversation. Why this and why that? And rather than necessarily having that, I think the fear and to have to speak up in a group situation, and then the fear of looking stupid if you do or you don't.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I've always tried to be a sponge, man. Absorb as much as I can absorb. People younger than me, people that older than me, whoever has got a nugget of wisdom for me, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, I love that. What was the third book?
You know, I'd probably say Good to Great's one of the better ones. That one really helps understand real world company decisions and things, and that's a good book.
It's interesting that the contents of that book seem to reappear in multiple other books. People have used all of his books, really, I think, as some kind of foundation for that people have then built on, which I suppose is the kind of the purpose of knowledge, is to be built upon.
Yeah.
Um, Here's another question for you then. So, what does the word? This is a different one because you haven't got this question. I've added this in since
All
I've
right,
put
I'm
the
ready for it.
list.
Well,
I'm
I
gonna
think
get
I'm
you.
ready for it.
What does the word success mean to you?
You know, the word success is so difficult, really,
Mm.
in that it means something that's so much different to everyone, and it changes for as your family grows. Success would be being able to support and provide for them, right? Uh, Being well known is success for some people. Uh, I would like to turn that into helping plenty of people. If that becomes being well known, that's great. But
Mm-hmm.
being well known for helping people, having a legacy that people listen to you, learn from you, and grew because of what you were willing to pour into them, that would be success for me.
I love that. And the reason I asked that question in particular is because, exactly as you said, it's difficult. And the other reason I ask it is because I think in today's world, it's almost like there's a single measure, and there isn't a single measure. Getting balance in your life is success, rather than focusing on one particular area, money and stuff, for example. Doesn't mean you don't need it. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have it. But it's just, I like to get different approach, get a different perspective, because someone listening to this can think, yeah, there is more than one measure of success. You don't have to go on, American Idol or X Factor or whatever it is. Kind of, that seems to be our measure of success these days, is fame and money.
And that's such a small group of people. I mean, when
Yeah.
you're talking statistically speaking, those people are very far and few between, and great for them. But there are millions, billions of people that are
Yes.
successful
Exactly.
that we don't know their names,
Yeah.
and don't try to be the next spotlight person. That's not going to get you anywhere. Try to add value to others. Try to help others. If that's part of it, wonderful, great for you.
Yeah.
But that's not how normal people are successful.
No, that's not how most of the people you've ever heard of from, 100 years ago. Look at Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie. They didn't set out to be superstars. They set out to solve problems, and as a result, they got wealthy and well known. The point was they were problem solving in the first place.
Yeah, their purpose was solving problems.
Yes,
The
exactly.
other came as an accessory, as a bow tie.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Who would you say has been the biggest inspiration to you in your career or in your life in general?
And I'm a man of faith, so my pastor has been a very influential man in my life, and just all around good character guy. Somewhat adopted me as a young man.
Hmm.
Some of those lessons I was talking about, he's taught me. So that'd be the one for me.
That's nice. And it's someone who's been quite constant for quite a long time during your life.
Yeah.
I think the important thing there is another reason. So I asked some of these questions around because mentors and inspiration come from all different angles. It could be somebody that you know personally. It could be someone who wrote a book. It could be someone from history for whatever reason. It could be anything. And we learn greatly from the lives of others and the wisdom and knowledge from other people.
That's right. And a lot of times you're mentored by different people for different things,
Yes.
right? So you may have 20 mentors in your lifespan, or maybe 100. Uh, but at the time you need them, they're there for you, and then they're for that season and for that purpose.
Yeah. Have you what about habits? So we're talking about kind of as we talk about the execution excellence and what are some of the habits you've adopted that have allowed you to execute excellently?
Yeah. So one thing, man, I want to be dependable. I mean, I want when others are they need me, they can get a hold of me.
Hmm.
I want to be there, uh, solid as a rock, just to say, okay, we know we can trust Brian for this activity. Again, I'm not perfect. That's not even what I'm trying to be, but I do want to be faithful, and to know that when you need me, I'm here for you. That's one of the habits, and I have people that have told me that.
Hmm.
So it's something that I try to live and want to do better of. The other thing is caring for others, genuinely knowing that I can't help everybody, but I can
Hmm.
help a few people, and I want to do that well.
I think that's important. You can't help everybody all of the time. That's just not going to be possible. Um, but if you focus on a couple of people that are around you that need some help, um, you'll probably end up helping quite a few people over time anyway.
Well, again, that goes back to that multiplication. If you help three or four and they help three or four,
Exactly. Yeah.
it can just grow exponentially.
What about one more? Any other habits that you think have been instrumental in your life?
I can't think of a third one right now. I wasn't
You
prepared
know,
for that one.
you know what'll happen. It will come to you afterwards. You'll
Yeah,
do
that's
you'll
right.
do
Yep.
you'll do something in the next 24 hours and say that was one. On a similar subject, then, what would you say have been some of your biggest life lessons? If you could go back 20 years and tell yourself a couple of things, what would they be?
The biggest one for me would be paying attention in school, man. It drives me crazy the things I want to do. So I wrote a book last year. I became a pilot last year, actually 2 years ago now, but I wrote a book about that experience, and I needed a lot of support and help because grammar and English weren't a strength for me.
Hmm.
And I wish I'd have paid more attention in there, and math and science, just understanding now how important they really are in life. And that's why I go back and give my time to high school students to try to encourage them and enforce that with them. So that was a great lesson. Pay attention. And I think I'm making up for that now, man, and paying attention with the leaders and the experiences and training and books and whatever I can absorb now. I understand how important it is. Other than that, I wish I would have treated my family better. I'm talking about my mom and dad. They divorced when I was 14 years old and had a lot of hard times there. But I will say that resilience and those hard times have prepared me for things in life that I don't think I'd go back and change it, to be honest with you. I think I learned so much from it that it has helped me. It's built steps towards my success.
It's a great mindset, because it's very easy not to be able to look back like that. I think we all have varying experiences throughout our lives, and we can either spend the rest of our lives going forward regretting those experiences or blaming those experiences for something, or we take them as for the lessons that we were able to take from them, that they were able to give us. And even like you talk there about wishing you'd paid more attention in school, the fact that you didn't means you now have an impetus to go back, and the credibility with the kids to go back to say, hey, I didn't listen and I think you should, rather than it being someone who did listen saying you should. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? And I think
absolutely, I think it has prepared me to be a voice and a trumpet that some others can't do. So yeah, definitely. Everything that's happened so far, I think it's a stepping stone, and we use it and we learn from it. And failure and success are so partnered together.
Oh, yeah. You can't have one without the other. I truly believe that it's impossible to separate the two.
That's right.
They're they're different sides of the same coin.
Yep.
This question I've adapted slightly. I used to ask people, if you could spend an hour with somebody, dead or alive, who would it be? But actually, I've extended it to a day, because I think you might find a bit more. We're going to find out an awful lot more in a day, but also it might change who that person might be. So who would you spend a day with?
Such a theoretical question.
It is, and it also, I've said this a million times, but I'm glad I'm the one asking, because
yeah, right.
Every day, even yesterday, I was wrestling with this question on my own as to who the hell would I spend my day with.
So since we're having this conversation, you've asked, I'm going to try to give an answer. Thomas Edison will be pretty cool. Down in Fort Myers here, about 2 hours from me, there's the Ford and the Edison winter homes that they actually were neighbors intentionally. They bought property beside each other.
They were very good friends, weren't they?
And there's a lab there of Thomas Edison's, and we know him for the light bulb, we know him for electricity, we know him for all those things. He invented and worked on so many things in that lab that we have no knowledge of, and improved things. Mm-hmm. Just a very creative and inquisitive person trying to solve problems. Again, not for fame and fortune. He spent trying to do other creative projects.
Pretty much every penny, didn't he? It's good.
Yeah, exactly.
He was friends with J.P. Morgan.
So that'd be a pretty cool dude to have a day with.
Yeah, I like that. And before we kind of wrap up, have you got any other kind of key advice you'd share with anybody who's in any path really, but looking to maybe achieve some particular goal or task? What would your advice be to anyone listening?
Stick with it. Stay with it. And that comes from someone who's been at the same company, the same career for 26 years. So I'm not just blabbing here. If you'll take
a rarity these days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you'll take small steps every day, you'll reach your goal. Miles are made by steps, individual steps. And too often people don't have the patience to stick with something and see it to fruition.
That is very, very true. Persistence is absolute key. Like we were saying before, right? We wait to get started because we want it to be perfect, and then we stop because it's not perfect. We've got to just keep going. The plan can evolve, but just keep moving. keep moving, and eventually you'll find the way there. I think we get razzle dazzled. I think part of the problem these days is we're razzled dazzled with the shortcut, the quick fix, the get rich quick scheme, and I think we don't appreciate actually how short a time frame, even 5, 10 or 20 years actually is. It's only when you get there and then you look back and say, shit, that went fast.
Yeah, definitely. With time is the only thing we all have equally, and we need to use it wisely. We need to make sure we are using it towards whatever our life goal, whatever our calling is. Stick with it and achieve those goals.
Great way to end, Brian. Great way to end. So where can people find you if they want to track you down?
Oh, that's great, man. So my website is www.buildcs.net. They can also email me at brianb@buildcs.net. My phone number, hey, give me a call, 863-800-9658. And then I'm on LinkedIn is the social platform I use the most with business people.
Brian, thank you very, very much for giving up your time and talking to me all the way from Florida today.
Thanks, David. It was great to speak with you.
Been great.
My pleasure.
No, you're welcome. And for anyone listening now, like I say, you can find Brian at pocketmastermind.com. We'll have all the links. Thank you for listening. And remember to like, share, follow, whatever method, whatever platform you're on. Make sure you're connecting and make sure you're spreading the word for us. That would be great. Until next time, thank you very, very much. Thank you so much for listening to this conversation. If you enjoyed it and you'd like to hear more similar episodes, head over to pocketmastermind.com, where you'll also find the links mentioned in this conversation. And if you haven't done so already, please leave us a review. It will really help us to get our message out and let more people know about these episodes. So leave us a review, leave us a rating, hit the subscribe button, and please share with your friends. Until next time, thank you again for listening.